Harlan. We're going to read How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. What type of book is it?
Dr. Seuss book.
The Grinch book. All right, here we go. How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was two sizes.
This is a cartoon Grinch.
Too small.
That's a cartoon Grinch.
Cartoon Grinch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve.
Because it's a Grinch. Because it's a long book every week for your school.
Hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a missile wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with the Grinch fingers, nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright up and early. They'd rush for their toys, and then, oh, the noise, noise. That's the one thing he hated. The noise. Look at all that noise of the toys. And the Grinch just could not stand all of that noise. Then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast. And they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. They got all of that food and the Who feast.
They can't sing. There's people.
And then they do something he'd like least of all. I know, they're going to watch it. And every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and the Who's would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? See all of them singing? They'd sing. Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick, with this coat and this hat. I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said. If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. There's the Grinch's Santa Claus outfit. And there's where he made Max a reindeer.
Everybody can't see.
They are seeing. They're going to watch it. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. And then the Grinch said, giddy up, and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. There's the Christmas sleigh, and Max pulling it. Okay, let's see. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air, and the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof with empty bags in his fist. All right. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch. But if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. You see the stockings right there? All the stockings that he started taking. Okay. Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And then he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimney.
And ice.
And he's taking the bags and putting them up the chimney.
And say ice.
Oh, we're going to get to that. And then he slunk to the ice box and he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding and he took the roast beast. He cleaned out the ice box as quick as a flash, while the Grinch even took the last can of Who hash.
See ice?
Yes. And then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee, and now grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? There's the Christmas tree that he's taking up. And little Cindy Lou Who.
Tiny one.
Tiny. Yeah, she's tiny. But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought of a lie and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on the tree that won't light on this side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and then I'll bring it back here.
Yeah, fix it back. Fix it back here.
And his fib fooled the child, and then he patted her head, and he got her a drink and sent her back to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went up the chimney and stuffed the tree up.
Is that drink?
That is her drink. And so he's talking to Cindy Lou Who, and then he gave her a drink and sent her back to bed.
You're hurting my belly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then the last thing he took was a log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. So, on the walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was too small, even too small for a mouse. So he took the fire, and then there was a crumb for a mouse. Okay, a few more pages. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for all the other Who mouses. It was 15:15 and all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled. He packed up their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel and the trimmings and trappings. Look at all that he packed up. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Hoo-poo to the Who's, he said, grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. He took all those presents up on top of Mount Crumpet. He's going to dump them, isn't he? That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, and then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sounded merry. It couldn't be so. It was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. The Grinch is shocked. He's surprised. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. Look at all of the Who's down there singing in Whoville. And the Grinch with his Grinch feet, ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could this be so? It came without ribbons, it came without bags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. Okay. All right, let's see. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 times that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with a load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beef. The end. And that was the Grinch that stole Christmas. Good night, Harlan.